What kind of man, what kind of woman rises when the world still sleeps? What kind of soul dares to wake up, not because the alarm said so, but because something inside them screamed that they were made for more? Discipline is born in darkness. That's not just a poetic phrase, it's a truth that separates the average from the extraordinary, the faint-hearted from the faithful, the wanderers from the warriors. When we talk about waking up at 4 a.m., we're not idolizing a number on the clock. We're talking about a choice, a conscious, gritty, sometimes painful choice to rise before the light comes, to move while others are still resting, and to make sacrifices when no one is watching. This is where discipline is born, not in applause, not in motivation, not in the fire of excitement, but in the cold, quiet, unseen darkness. There's something sacred about the early hours. When the world is still asleep, when the streets are empty, and when the air is thick with silence, something happens in a person who chooses to rise. There is no audience, there is no recognition. There is no applause for the alarm clock you didn't ignore, for the pillow you left behind, for the warmth you abandoned. But that's exactly where discipline begins, not with fireworks, but with small, painful decisions in the dark. And that darkness isn't just literal, it's symbolic. It represents the moments when things are uncertain, when the future feels blurry, when your body doesn't want to cooperate with your spirit. It's that mental fog at 4 a.m. that whispers, "You deserve more sleep. It's too early." No one else is doing this, and it's in that precise moment, when the temptation to retreat is strongest, that something inside you must stand up and say, "I will not yield." That's discipline. Not loud, not emotional, just firm, consistent, relentless. Discipline is never born in comfort. It's not born in a room full of cheerleaders or in a playlist of motivational quotes. It's born in solitude. It's forged in the furnace of decision, when you get up before your feelings catch up, when you move before your body agrees, when you obey the purpose inside you before the sun even dares to rise. That's the kind of discipline that doesn't need permission. It doesn't wait for inspiration, it moves, it wakes, it walks in the dark and prepares for a day that hasn't even started. Most people never understand the power of this because they've never truly walked through it. They look at the fruit of a disciplined life, but they never see the roots. And the roots, those deep, unseen, grueling hours are grown in darkness. You don't see them, no one sees them, but they're there. Every early morning, every ignored temptation, every repetition, every moment of saying no to what is easy and yes to what is hard, those moments become the roots that hold you firm when the storms come. Discipline is not a talent. It's not something you inherit. It's not something you wait to feel. It's something you build, and like all things that are built to last, it takes time, pressure, and pain. You think a soldier feels like training before dawn. You think a builder feels like laying bricks in the rain. You think the person becoming something great feels like it every morning they rise. No, they don't move because they feel. They move because they're called. They move because they've tasted what happens when you don't, and they've decided they won't go back to that. There's something terrifyingly honest about 4 a.m. There's no one to blame when you stay in bed. There's no one to impress when you get up. It's just you and the mirror of your choices, and for most people, that mirror is unbearable, because it forces you to face whether or not you truly want the thing you claim to want. You say you want change, but do you want it more than comfort? You say you want growth, but do you want it more than rest? You say you want to be great, but do you want it more than sleep? At 4 a.m., the truth answers back. The people who rise in darkness understand something most people never do, that every sunrise is earned, that the victories of the day are not won during the day, they're won in the still hours before it begins. When no one sees, when no one praises, when there's no promise of a reward, that's when the real work begins. That's when your future is being written. If you can learn to command yourself before the world commands your attention, you become dangerous in the best way. Because you're no longer driven by noise, by opinion, by external fire. You've lit your own match. You've built your own fire. You've trained your soul to obey a higher voice. That's what 4 a.m. teaches you, that the most important voice is the one inside. And that voice gets clearer, stronger, purer when everything else is silent. We live in a world addicted to distraction, addicted to entertainment, addicted to ease. And in that world, people who master discipline, who rise early, who work silently, who prepare in darkness, will always have an advantage, not because they're better, but because they've learned to do what others won't. While others are scrolling, they're studying. While others are dreaming, they're building. While others are comfortable, they're becoming. And what makes it even more powerful is that it's available to anyone. You don't need wealth. You don't need connections. You don't need perfect conditions. You just need a will that is stronger than your weakness, a reason that is bigger than your resistance, and the humility to know that greatness begins not with a crowd, but with a choice. So, when I say discipline is born in darkness, I mean it. It is born when you rise before the sun, when you go before the world tells you to move, when you suffer in secret and refuse to settle. It's born in silence, when the only sound is your breath and your resolve. And it grows, not with speed, but with consistency, not with applause, but with pain, and it becomes unbreakable, because it was born where most refuse to go. Comfort is the enemy of purpose. That's not just a motivational line, it's a warning. A loud, clear, urgent warning for anyone who truly wants to do something with their life. Comfort will lie to you. It will make you believe that rest is always deserved, that peace is the same thing as stillness, that waiting is the same thing as wisdom. But purpose, it doesn't speak in soft tones. Purpose calls you to move, to stretch, to step into places that feel unfamiliar, uncertain, and yes, often uncomfortable. The person who is ruled by comfort will always find a reason to delay their destiny. Comfort whispers, "You've done enough." It wraps around you like a warm blanket and says, "You can start tomorrow." But purpose says, "There is more." Purpose is never satisfied with just showing up. It's not content with participation trophies. It demands that you dig deep, that you show up when you don't feel like it, that you keep pressing forward even when your body begs for a break. And that's where most people lose the fight. Not because they lack talent or vision or even opportunity, but because they choose comfort when the cost of purpose becomes real. You can't serve two masters. You can't chase comfort and chase purpose at the same time. One will always require the sacrifice of the other. If you want to stay comfortable, you'll have to silence the voice inside you that's pushing you toward more. You'll have to ignore the ache in your soul that knows you were made for something higher, harder, and holier than ease. But if you want to live for purpose, really live for it, you'll have to walk through fire. You'll have to give up things others cling to. You'll have to look foolish, feel exhausted, be misunderstood, and still press on. Comfort is addictive. It tricks you into thinking you're safe when you're actually stagnant. It tells you that slowing down is self-care, when sometimes it's just fear in disguise. People fall into the trap of thinking that the goal is to be comfortable. A nice life, a soft routine, a predictable day, but look around, nothing great ever came from that. No warrior was built on pillows, no world changer was made in a cocoon of ease. Every meaningful achievement, every lasting impact was birthed through discomfort. Through sweat, through struggle, through moments of almost giving up, but not. The danger of comfort is that it always shows up looking like relief, like a reward, like something you've earned, and sometimes it is. But too often, it becomes the place where purpose goes to die, because the truth is, purpose rarely fits inside the lines of convenience. Purpose will cost you sleep. It'll cost you friends who don't understand your drive. It'll cost you weekends, comfort zones, and the illusion of control. But what you get in return, if you endure, is clarity, grit, growth, and the deep, unmistakable sense that you are exactly where you're supposed to be, even if it hurts. Most people are not held back by a lack of ability. They're held back by a love of comfort. They settle, not because they couldn't go further, but because further looked too painful. They stop just short of the edge, just short of the breakthrough, because they're afraid of what they'll have to leave behind. But the ones who become unstoppable, the ones who live with fire and focus, are the ones who have learned to make peace with discomfort. They've learned that resistance is not the enemy, it's the evidence that they are on the right path. Purpose will demand more of you than comfort ever will, but purpose will also give more to you than comfort ever could. The world is quiet at 4 a.m., but heaven is not. There's something about those early hours that cuts through the noise, not just around you, but inside you. It's not just the silence of empty streets or dark skies. It's the silence of distraction falling away. It's the kind of quiet that makes you hear things you've been too busy to notice. The questions in your heart, the voice of conviction, the whisper of purpose calling you deeper. When everyone else is asleep, something eternal wakes up inside of you. It's in that sacred stillness that heaven begins to speak. People talk about clarity, about needing direction, about wanting answers, but they keep looking in places filled with noise. They keep scrolling, running, chasing moments that are loud and fast and fleeting. But 4 a.m. slows everything down. The world hasn't started demanding from you yet. Your phone isn't buzzing. No one's expecting anything. And in that empty space, if you're willing to be still, you'll find that God is not silent. He's never been silent. We just haven't been still enough to hear. There's a kind of strength that's only found in solitude. A kind of fire that's only lit in quiet places. 4 a.m. becomes a meeting place between who you are and who you were made to be. There's no pressure to perform, no need to impress, just presence, just you and the one who formed you, the one who sees beyond your failures and fears. And it's in that place that something begins to shift. Not just your schedule, but your soul. Not just your routine, but your reason. We often ask for peace, but we run from silence. We ask for purpose, but we avoid the very moments where it speaks the loudest. The world doesn't want you quiet. It wants you distracted, busy, anxious, always moving, never pausing long enough to question what you're really doing and why. But 4 a.m. breaks that pattern. It's a rebellion against the chaos, a declaration that you will not be ruled by noise, that you will not be shaped by the clock, but by the calling, and heaven meets you there. Not always with fireworks, not always with answers, but with presence, and that's enough to keep going. People think strength is built in public, in front of crowds, in the gym, in meetings, in stages and platforms. But real strength is forged in the quiet, in the prayers no one hears, in the decisions no one applauds, in the early mornings when your eyes burn and your body resists, but your spirit says, go. That's when heaven leans in. That's when you're not just working, you're aligning, not just moving, you're listening, not just grinding, you're growing. If you've never met silence face to face, you won't understand this. You won't understand what it means to sit in the dark and not feel empty, but expectant. To wake up not because you have to, but because something in your soul refuses to sleep through your calling. 4 a.m. is not about being superhuman, it's about being surrendered. It's about knowing that before the sun touches the sky, heaven is already at work. And if you're willing, you can meet it there, not rushed, not distracted, just present. In that kind of silence, you don't find loneliness, you find revelation. You realize you're not walking alone, that the journey you're on has weight, that the dreams you carry were never just yours, that the burdens you feel are shaping you for something greater than this moment. The world may still be asleep, but heaven isn't. It sees you. It hears your steps. It honors your sacrifice. And in that quiet hour, when no one else notices, you begin to understand that the silence is not empty. It's full. Full of power, full of purpose, full of the presence that never sleeps. Victory begins with obedience, not to a schedule, not to the grind, but to the calling that was placed on your life before you ever woke up to it. That calling doesn't start at 9 a.m. It doesn't wait for perfect conditions or ideal feelings. It calls you in the dark. It calls you when your body says no, when your mind is foggy, when your bed feels like the only safe place left. Obedience is what separates desire from discipline. Everyone wants victory, but very few are willing to submit themselves to the path that leads to it. Obedience isn't glamorous. It's not loud. It doesn't look impressive at first. In fact, it usually feels small, repetitive, even invisible. It's saying yes when there's no reward yet. It's doing the hard thing when no one is watching. It's showing up when nothing in you feels like showing up. And that's the point. Obedience is the seed of victory, not the kind of victory the world defines, quick, shiny, loud, but the kind that lasts, the kind that is earned, the kind that shapes who you are when no one else is clapping for you. The problem is, we've been trained to move only when we feel like it. We've been taught that passion is the fuel we need to act. But the truth is, obedience is stronger than passion. Passion fades. Obedience doesn't need to feel anything. It just needs to know what is right and do it. At 4 a.m., there is no audience, there is no energy. There's just you, your purpose, and your willingness to follow through. And if you can obey in that moment, if you can submit your body, your will, your comfort to something higher, you are already winning. People think victory happens on the field, on the stage, under the lights. But that's just where it's revealed. The real victory happened in private, in the hours you spent preparing when no one else did, in the mornings you rose before the excuses had a chance to speak, in the choices you made to stay true when compromise would have been easier. Obedience builds that. It lays brick by brick, day by day, until the foundation is so strong that nothing can shake it. You can't shortcut obedience. You can't fake it. You either do the work or you don't. You either rise or you stay in bed, and those decisions, as small as they seem, shape you, not just your results, because obedience teaches your heart to follow through even when the feelings disappear. It teaches your mind to keep going even when doubt screams at you to stop. It teaches your soul to trust in something deeper than the immediate. There's a reason why obedience feels so difficult. It's because it requires humility. It requires you to say, I am not in control of everything. I'm not the source of my own strength, but I will walk in what I've been called to. That kind of humility is rare. That kind of surrender is powerful. And that's where victory begins, not in pride, not in control, but in obedience, in saying yes over and over when everything in you wants to say no. At 4 a.m., your obedience becomes louder than your doubt. Your decision becomes greater than your delay. You are no longer led by convenience. You are led by commitment, and that quiet, consistent, unseen obedience becomes a weapon. It becomes a pattern. It becomes the very thing that carries you when the storms hit, when the crowds disappear, when the world shakes. Because long before you stood tall in front of people, you knelt low in front of your calling. And that's what made you unstoppable. Becoming unstoppable is not about noise, but resolve. The world tells you to be loud, to be seen, to make a scene if you want to be successful. But the people who actually become unshakable don't get there by shouting. They get there by deciding quietly, deeply, consistently. They become immovable because somewhere in the silence, they made a promise to themselves that they refused to break. It wasn't a dramatic announcement. It wasn't a viral moment. It was a decision, a real one, and it was made when no one was clapping, when no one was looking, and when no one else believed in them yet. The noise can come later. The results might speak loud one day. But the beginning of being unstoppable is much quieter than most expect. It's not about showing everyone how strong you are. It's about knowing what you'll do even when you feel weak. It's about resolve that doesn't depend on applause or motivation. It's what's underneath everything else. The world sees the surface, the pace, the grind, the output, but underneath it all, what keeps a person going is the choice they made when it would have been easier to quit. Resolve is what wakes you up at 4 a.m. when your body wants more rest. It's what gets you moving when your heart is heavy. It's what tells you to keep building when nothing around you looks like progress. And that resolve doesn't come from hype. It's not born in the crowd. It's formed in the private battles, the early mornings, the unseen struggles, the times when the only person holding you accountable is the one staring back at you in the mirror. There's a reason why most people don't become unstoppable. They confuse motion with strength. They confuse talking with action. They move fast, but they have no foundation. The moment pressure comes, they fold. The moment resistance shows up, they hesitate because their foundation wasn't resolve, it was noise, and noise will always fade. But resolve doesn't go anywhere. Resolve doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't need external validation. It just keeps showing up over and over, whether the results are there or not, whether the world is watching or not. The strongest people you'll ever meet won't always be the loudest. They'll be the ones who've walked through fire and decided they'd rather burn than break their word. They've trained their hearts to keep going. They've silenced every excuse. They've wrestled with doubt and fear and still chose forward. That's what it means to be unstoppable. Not that you never struggle, but that you never let the struggle decide who you are. Resolve doesn't make headlines, it doesn't trend, but it builds legacy, it builds endurance, it builds the kind of strength that doesn't shake when the storms come, because it was never about hype, it was about honor. Keeping your word when no one else demands it, following through when quitting would be easier, staying faithful when the path feels empty. Resolve is the reason some people make it through the night while others give up by morning. You don't need to convince the world of your greatness, you need to convince yourself that you won't back down, and that happens long before the world ever sees your strength. It happens in the dark. It happens in the silence. It happens when your only companion is commitment, because real resolve doesn't shout, it endures, and that endurance is what makes a person unstoppable.